Have you ever felt a calling amidst the chaos and noise of the world toward a simple way of life, a yearning for contemplation and a closer relationship with God? Saint Charbel Makhlouf, the humble Lebanese monk, illustrates this very path for us. His life, characterized by solitude, prayer, and total surrender to God, was lived far from the clamor of the world around him, and it has become a beacon of hope for millions of faithful followers. Through his intercession, God has shown his healing power in countless miracles that continue to happen even today. Let's journey together, exploring the life, virtues, and miracles of this extraordinary saint from the East, whose light of holiness reaches across boundaries, and whose power of intercession continues to move the hearts of people around the world. Chapter 1. The Early Years of Life. In the small village of Bekar Kafra, nestled in the majestic mountains of northern Lebanon, a child destined for sainthood was born on May 8, 1828. His parents, Antun Zarur Makhlouf and Brigitta Chidiak, humble farmers of deep Maronite Catholic faith, called him Youssef. Little did anyone know that this boy, born into the modesty of a mountain family, would grow up to be one of the most revered saints, not just in the Middle East, but across the world. Youssef's childhood unfolded in the simplicity of rural life, surrounded by flocks of sheep and the fields that sustained his family. Even at a very young age, he showed a natural inclination towards prayer and contemplation. While other children played, young Youssef often sought solitude to talk with God. His parents watched in awe as their son, in the innocence of his childhood, began to show signs of a profound inner life. Tragedy came knocking at the door of the Makhlouf family soon enough. When Youssef was merely 3 years old, his father, Antun, was forcibly conscripted into the Ottoman army and never returned, passing away far from home. This heartbreaking event left a deep mark on the young boy, who found solace in his maternal uncle, who stepped into the role of a father, becoming a model of virtue and faith for the little orphan. The widow Brigitta, eager to provide stability for her children, remarried a pious man named Ibrahim, who welcomed Youssef with genuine affection. Under this new family roof, the young boy continued to grow in wisdom and virtue. His formal education was limited, as was common among Lebanese peasants of the time, but his spiritual formation was extraordinary. From his mother's and uncle's lips, he learned the traditional Maronite prayers, the lives of saints, and the importance of daily communion with God. As Youssef entered his teenage years, his character was marked by an uncommon serenity. His peers described him as a thoughtful young man who spoke little, but whose actions spoke volumes. He labored diligently in the fields and tended the family flock with care, but always found moments to retreat and pray. In those Lebanese mountains, gazing at the vast starry sky and the majestic valleys, it was there the young Youssef began to hear more clearly the divine call that would determine his destiny, a vocation to a life entirely devoted to God, far removed from the world's clamor. Chapter 2. The Call to Religious Life. Young Youssef Makhlouf was growing, filled with a spiritual restlessness that manifested in his ongoing quest for solitude to pray. How could he respond to that inner voice, inviting him to surrender completely to God? At the age of 23, the answer became clear and definitive in his heart. He must leave the world behind and embrace a monastic life. However, this decision was fraught with obstacles and challenges that would confirm the authenticity of his calling. Youssef's family, particularly his mother and uncle, although deeply religious, had other hopes for him. As was customary in Lebanese society at the time, they wished to see him married, starting a home and continuing the family lineage. When Youssef shared his intention to enter the monastery, they tried everything to dissuade him. They even went so far as to introduce him to a virtuous young woman he could marry, thinking that this would help him forget his monastic aspirations. The decisive moment arrived one morning in 1851 when Youssef, after a night of intense prayer, decided to set off towards the monastery of Our Lady of Maifuk. Without bidding farewell to his family, to avoid the painful scene of separation, he took only what was necessary and embarked on a journey through mountain paths, fully trusting in divine providence. During the journey, it is said he experienced a profound peace that assured him he was following the path to which God had destined him from eternity. Upon arriving at the monastery, Youssef was greeted with caution by the monks, who sought to ensure the sincerity of his vocation. After successfully completing the initial testing period, he was accepted as a novice into the Lebanese Maronite order, taking on the name Charbel, in honor of the 2nd century martyr from Antioch. This name change symbolized his death to the world and the birth to a new life dedicated entirely to Christ. The young novice threw himself into monastic discipline with fervor, standing out for his precise observance of the rules and his spirit of self-denial. The novice year was a time for Charbel of spiritual deepening and adaptation to communal life. Under the guidance of experienced mentors, he learned the essentials of Eastern monastic spirituality: liturgical prayer, meditation on the sacred scriptures, manual labor, and contemplative silence. His humility and docility impressed his formators, who saw in him a soul chosen by God for great things. On November 1st, 1853, the Feast of All Saints, Brother Charbel pronounced his religious vows, fully dedicating himself to God through the profession of poverty, chastity, and obedience. This day marked the beginning of a journey towards perfection, leading him to the heights of sainthood. After his profession, he was sent to the monastery of Saint Maron in Anaya, where he would complete his theological training and prepare for the priesthood, the next step in his total surrender to the Lord and to his church. Chapter 3. Life in the Monastery. The monastery of Saint Maron in Anaya, situated in the Lebanese mountains, became Brother Charbel's home for the next several years. This cenobium, founded in the 18th century, was known for its austerity and fidelity to Eastern monastic traditions. The stone walls, the silent hallways, and the chapel, where a lamp burned perpetually before the Blessed Sacrament, formed the backdrop for the sanctity of the young monk, Saint Charbel Makhlouf. His monastic journey began long before dawn. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the ringing of the bell awakened the monks for the first prayer of the day, the divine office, according to the Maronite rite. Charbel was always notable for being the first to arrive at the chapel, where he would remain motionless, absorbed in contemplation. His community brothers would later recall how he seemed to transfigure during prayer, especially during the Holy Mass. His face, usually austere, would radiate an inner light, revealing his profound communion with the Lord. After completing his theological formation, Charbel was ordained a priest on July 23, 1859, in Bekerke, the seat of the Maronite Patriarchate. This event, which for many priests represents the pinnacle of their aspirations, was for him merely another step on his path toward total anonymity. As a priest, he celebrated the Eucharist with extraordinary devotion. It is said that the preparation for Mass would take him hours of prayer, that his thanksgiving often extended so long that his superiors sometimes had to gently remind him of his other obligations. During the consecration, witnesses claim to have seen him elevated from the ground, completely absorbed in the mystery he was celebrating. Manual labor occupied a significant part of the day at the monastery. Following the Benedictine motto, "Pray and work," the monks cultivated the land, tended the vineyards, and engaged in various artisanal tasks. Father Charbel dedicated himself to the humblest jobs, working diligently and without complaint. His calloused hands bore witness to the hard work in the monastery's fields, yet his mind remained constantly elevated towards God, transforming every task into a prayer. The personal austerity of Father Charbel exceeded even the demands of the monastic rule. His cell, smaller than those of the other monks, contained barely the essentials: a straw mattress for a bed, a stone for a pillow, a crucifix, and a few spiritual books. He never lit a fire to keep warm during the harsh Lebanese winters. His diet was extremely frugal, consisting of a bit of vegetables, fruits when available, and small portions of bread. He practiced strict fasting, especially during the significant liturgical periods, reducing his food intake to the minimum necessary for survival. Despite his extraordinary inner life, Father Charbel was a monk like the others in many respects. He participated in communal life with simplicity, faithfully adhering to the norms and customs of the monastery. However, his brothers perceived something special in him, a presence that inspired reverence without imposing, a wisdom that didn't come from books, but from intimate communion with God. Many sought him out for spiritual counsel, drawn to his discernment and the peace radiating from his person. The holy monk listened attentively, responded with measured and precise words, always directing attention back to Christ, avoiding becoming a center of admiration himself. Chapter 4. The Hermitage. Encountering God in Solitude. After 16 years of cenobitic life at the monastery of Saint Maron, Father Charbel felt an inner calling for greater solitude. This desire did not stem from a spirit of singularity or dissatisfaction with communal life, but from an authentic thirst for God that could only be quenched in absolute silence. In 1875, an event occurred that witnesses interpreted as a divine sign. While Father Charbel was preparing the lamps for the feast of the exaltation of the Holy Cross, one lamp, filled with boiling oil, exploded in his hands without causing him any harm. This miracle convinced his superiors that God had special plans for him. With the blessing of his superiors, Father Charbel withdrew to the hermitage of Saints Peter and Paul, located on a hill not far from the main monastery. This small stone structure, divided into 3 tiny rooms, 1 chapel, 1 workroom, and 1 cell, would become his home for the next 23 years until his passing. The move to the hermitage represented not a privilege, but a trial, as the lifestyle there was even more austere than that of the monastery, with heightened demands for silence, prayer, and penance. Life in the hermitage followed an unchanging rhythm, marked solely by the alternation between prayer and work, between day and night. Father Charbel would rise many hours before dawn to devote himself to personal prayer. At 4 in the morning, he celebrated Holy Mass, prolonging his thanksgiving well into the morning. The rest of the day was spent in spiritual reading, manual labor in the small garden surrounding the hermitage, and reciting the divine office. His diet was further limited to 1 daily meal consisting mostly of some vegetables and a bit of hard bread. The external silence of the hermitage fostered internal silence, allowing Father Charbel to hear the voice of God more clearly. He rarely spoke, even with his hermit companion or the occasional visitors. When he needed to communicate, he did so using minimal, precise words, filled with spiritual wisdom. This economy of words was not born from unsociability, but from a deep reverence for silence, where God speaks to the heart. An elderly monk who visited him periodically remarked, "I would enter the hermitage and leave without exchanging a single word with Father Charbel, but in his presence, I felt I learned more about God than from many books." The prayer life of the Lebanese hermit reached mystical dimensions that were only partially known to his contemporaries. His hermit companion later testified having seen Father Charbel levitating during prayer, surrounded by a supernatural light. Other witnesses claimed that during the Eucharistic consecration, his face shone like the sun. On stormy nights, when lightning would briefly illuminate the chapel through the small window, he could be seen completely still, as if in ecstasy, unaware of the elements raging around him. The fame of the hermit's holiness began to spread, attracting numerous pilgrims seeking his intercession or spiritual advice. Father Charbel, however, shunned all human recognition. When visitors arrived, he would retreat to his cell or to the garden, avoiding becoming an object of veneration. His only desire was to remain hidden in God, like the grain of wheat that falls to the ground and dies, to bear much fruit. In a life marked by radical seclusion and total devotion, far removed from any human gaze, Saint Charbel Makhlouf was preparing the ground for an extraordinary manifestation of divine glory, which would be unveiled after his passing. Let's turn the page to chapter 5, titled The Death and the First Miraculous Signs. On December 16, 1898, while Father Charbel was celebrating the Holy Mass in the small chapel of the Hermitage, an extraordinary event took place. At the moment of elevating the chalice, he suffered a stroke that left him paralyzed. Despite excruciating pain, he continued the celebration with immense difficulty, determined to express his love for the Eucharist until the very end of his earthly life. After the Mass concluded, the monks carefully carried him to his cell, where he remained in agony for 8 long days, immersed in constant prayer without uttering a single complaint. On the night of December 24th, Christmas Eve, as the community was preparing to celebrate the birth of the Savior, the soul of Father Charbel quietly departed this world. He left for the ultimate encounter with the one to whom he had devoted his entire life. He was 70 years old, having spent 47 years in religious life and 23 years as a hermit. His death, just like his life, was marked by simplicity and seclusion. Outside the monastery, it seemed that no one had realized a saint had just left this world. The hermit's body was carried in procession from the hermitage to the monastery, amidst a heavy snowfall that made the journey difficult. The monks observed that despite the extreme cold, his body retained a strange flexibility and warmth, as if death had not fully claimed it. Following monastic tradition, they dressed his body in religious habit and laid it on the church floor upon a straw mat, leaving his face uncovered so that the faithful could pay their final respects. That very night, witnesses claimed to see a bright light shining from the tomb, illuminating the entire monastery. Some villagers from nearby hamlets, unaware of the monk's death, came to the monastery inquiring about the origin of that mysterious light they had seen from afar. The monks then realized they were witnessing a supernatural sign. The news spread swiftly throughout the region, and crowds began to gather to venerate the mortal remains of the hermit, whose reputation for holiness, until then confined to a small circle, was starting to expand. The doctors and scientists who examined the body during these instances reaffirmed the inexplicability of the phenomenon from a medical standpoint, especially considering the climatic conditions of Lebanon and the complete absence of any embalming procedures. The phenomenon of the incorruptibility of Saint Charbel's body is not unique in the history of the Church. Similar cases have been documented throughout various periods and regions involving other saints. However, what makes the story of this Lebanese hermit particularly remarkable is the enduring nature of this phenomenon over decades, along with the continuous flow of the miraculous oil that has not ceased to this very day. For the Maronite faithful, and for Catholics in general, this supernatural preservation of the body serves as a divine sign, one that confirms the holiness of Father Charbel and the truth of his message, a message of austerity, prayer, and total surrender to God. Chapter 7, The Miraculous Oil. Among the extraordinary phenomena associated with Saint Charbel, perhaps the most consistent and documented is the miraculous oil that flows from his tomb, and at certain times, even from his own body. This peculiar liquid, appearing oily but lighter than common oil, has been the subject of awe, veneration, and study since it first manifested. Just months after the saint's passing, the oil began to flow abundantly from the original grave where Father Charbel's body was buried. The monks of the monastery of Saint Charbel in Anaya were astonished to notice that the earth covering the tomb remained constantly damp, regardless of climatic shifts. Upon closer inspection of this phenomenon, they discovered a transparent, slightly viscous liquid with a pleasant aroma, emerging from the very spot where the body lay. This discovery coincided with the first reports of mysterious lights over the tomb, as if both phenomena were complementary signs of the glory that God wished to manifest through his servant. After the first exhumation and the transfer of the body to a coffin, the phenomenon did not cease, but rather transformed. The oil began to ooze from the very corpse, soaking the monk habits that had covered him. The monks responsible for guarding the remains had to change these garments periodically, because they would become completely drenched. These habits, in turn, were cut into small pieces and distributed among the faithful as relics. Accounts from that time affirm that even these fragments of fabric continued to yield small amounts of the mysterious liquid for long afterwards. The physical and chemical properties of the oil have puzzled scientists who have had the opportunity to analyze it. At first glance, it appears to be clear water, yet its behavior is distinctly different. It does not evaporate easily, maintains its characteristic aroma for an extended period, and, most astonishingly, it seems to regenerate in the containers where it is kept. Numerous witnesses have reported that vials containing only a few drops of this oil inexplicably appeared full after some time, with no one having added more liquid. The fragrance emitted by the oil has been described in various ways, but most agree that it is extremely pleasant, akin to a blend of flowers and Eastern spices. This perfume intensifies during the celebration of the Holy Mass, or in moments of intense prayer near the relics. Some pilgrims assert that the scent lingers on their hands or clothing for days after touching the vessel that contains the oil. It seems to accompany them, reminding them of the spiritual presence of the saintly hermit. The healing properties attributed to this miraculous liquid are countless. From the very onset of its emergence, the faithful began using it with faith to anoint sick parts of their bodies, to drink it in small quantities mixed with water, or simply to carry it with them for protection. The archives of the monastery of Anaya preserve thousands of testimonies of healings obtained through the application of the oil, ranging from mild ailments like headaches or digestive issues to severe diseases such as cancer, paralysis, or blindness, considered incurable by modern medicine. The Church, always cautious in these matters, has thoroughly investigated many of these cases. They have officially recognized some as authentic miracles, inexplicable from a scientific perspective. These documented miracles were crucial in the canonization process of Saint Charbel. However, most of the graces obtained through the saint's intercession and through the use of the oil remain within the realm of personal testimony, known only by those who received them and by their close circle of family and friends who witnessed the healings. What is most extraordinary about the phenomenon of the miraculous oil is its persistence over time. More than 120 years have passed since the death of Father Charbel, and the prodigy continues to manifest. Unlike other similar phenomena recorded in church history, which ceased after a few years or decades, the flow of oil from Saint Charbel's tomb seems inexhaustible. It's as if it wishes to signify that the intercession of this holy hermit remains equally active and effective for all who invoke him with faith. Chapter 8. Miraculous healings of incurable diseases. Among the many miracles attributed to the intercession of Saint Charbel, the healings of diseases deemed incurable by modern medicine hold a prominent place. These wonders, meticulously documented and verified by medical and ecclesiastical commissions, serve as one of the cornerstones upon which the canonization process of the Lebanese hermit saint was established. The first miracle officially recognized by the Church occurred in 1950, when the Lebanese nun, Sister Maria Abel Kamari, was instantly healed of a severe stomach ulcer. The sister, who had been suffering intense pain and frequently vomited blood, had been declared hopeless by doctors, who considered her case inoperable due to her delicate health. One night, while she slept, she had a vision of Saint Charbel telling her, "I have come to perform surgery on you." Upon awakening, Sister Maria discovered to her astonishment that all her symptoms had vanished. Subsequent medical examinations confirmed her complete healing, with no trace of the ulcer remaining. The doctors who examined the case unanimously declared that such a recovery had no scientific explanation. Another emblematic case is that of Nohad El-Shami, a Lebanese woman who in 1993 suffered a hemiplegia that paralyzed the left side of her body. Doctors diagnosed her with a stroke and informed her that the paralysis would be permanent. On the night of January 22nd, while she was asleep, Nohad experienced a profound vision. She saw two Maronite monks approaching her bed. One of them, the one she recognized as Saint Charbel from the images she had seen before, told her, "I have come to perform a surgery on you." Immediately, he appeared to put his hands gently around her neck, as if conducting a surgical procedure, and then he commanded her, "Get up and walk." When Nohad awoke, she was astonished to find she could move her left side perfectly. The paralysis had vanished completely. What makes Nohad El-Shami's case truly extraordinary is that after her recovery, a clearly defined surgical scar appeared on her neck, as though she had genuinely undergone surgery. This scar, which had not existed prior to the miracle, has been examined by numerous doctors, who confirmed it resembled a professional surgical incision. Even more remarkably, since the day of her healing, every January 22nd, this scar partially opens up and exudes an oily liquid, similar to the oil that flows from the saint's tomb. This phenomenon continues to occur even today, over 3 decades after the original miracle. In 1994, another extraordinary event unfolded for Raymond Nader, a Lebanese engineer. During a prayer visit to the hermitage of Saint Charbel in Anaya, he suddenly felt a burning sensation in his hands. Upon examining them, he was amazed to discover hand-shaped marks had appeared on his palms, resembling superficial burns that caused no pain. Doctors who examined these marks could not determine their origin. Astonishingly, these signs disappear and reappear periodically, particularly during times of intense prayer. Raymond claims to have received spiritual messages from Saint Charbel linked to these marks, leading him to a profound conversion and to dedicate his life to spreading devotion to the saintly hermit. Miraculous healings are not limited to Lebanese or Maronite believers. In Brazil, Mexico, Australia, the United States, and many other countries, cases of individuals from diverse backgrounds and beliefs have been documented, receiving extraordinary miracles through the intercession of Saint Charbel. One of the most notable cases involves an atheist Italian doctor who, stricken with terminal cancer, traveled to Lebanon as a final resort, after exhausting all treatment options. After praying at the tomb of the saint and applying the miraculous oil, he experienced such rapid improvement that it bewildered his fellow doctors. Subsequent tests confirmed the complete disappearance of the cancer, leaving no trace in his body. The Catholic Church, remaining faithful to its tradition of caution and scientific rigor, investigates every case of alleged miraculous healing with extreme scrupulousness. Only those that pass all medical and theological verifications are officially recognized as miracles. This process includes studying the complete medical history, testimonies from attending physicians, examinations conducted before and after the healing, and confirmation that no possible scientific explanation exists for the recovery. Furthermore, it must be verified that the healing was complete, instantaneous, or very rapid and permanent. What characterizes the miracles of Saint Charbel, according to the testimonies of those who have received them, is not just the physical healing, but also the spiritual transformation that often accompanies it. Many individuals report having experienced, along with physical healing, a deep inner conversion, a strengthening of their faith, and a radical shift in their life priorities. This aligns perfectly with the spirit of the saintly hermit, for whom the health of the soul has always been more important than that of the body. Through these wonders, Saint Charbel continues his evangelizing mission, drawing souls toward Christ and reminding our contemporary materialistic world of the reality of the supernatural and the importance of eternal values. Chapter 9. Appearances and Miracles. After his death, the supernatural influence of Saint Charbel is not limited to physical healings or the phenomenon of the miraculous oil. Numerous faithful from various regions of the world have reported appearances and mystical experiences related to the Lebanese hermit saint. Although these events are of a more subjective nature than medically verifiable healings, they constitute an important part of the heavenly ministry that Saint Charbel seems to carry out from beyond this world. Saint Charbel's appearances often exhibit common characteristics that lend them credibility. In most cases, the visionary did not deliberately seek out the phenomenon. Rather, it occurred unexpectedly, often during prayer or in situations of dire need. The figure that manifests aligns with the physical description of Father Charbel, a short monk with a white beard, clad in the Maronite habit, radiating a supernatural light. In many instances, the appearance is accompanied by a distinctive aroma, reminiscent of the oil from his tomb. One of the most striking testimonies comes from Danny Saad, a young Lebanese man who, in 2015, was in critical condition following a severe motorcycle accident. Doctors had informed the family that he had little chance of survival, and if he did, he would be left with permanent neurological damage. His parents, devout followers of Saint Charbel, placed a relic of the saint on their son's body and began a novena of prayer. On the third night, as Danny's mother kept vigil by his hospital bed, she was astonished to see a luminous figure, which she recognized as Saint Charbel, approaching the bed and placing his hands on her son's head before disappearing. The following morning, Danny awoke from his coma without any neurological impairment, to the astonishment of the medical team. The young man claimed to have seen the very same monk during his unconsciousness, who told him that he still had a mission to fulfill on earth. The appearances of Saint Charbel are not always linked to physical healings. In many instances, the saint appears to provide spiritual comfort, warn about future dangers, or call for conversion. During the Lebanese Civil War from 1975 to 1990, there were numerous testimonies from individuals who claimed to have been saved from bombings or ambushes, thanks to the visible intervention of the hermit, guiding them towards safe routes, or warning them not to enter certain buildings moments before they were destroyed. One particularly documented phenomenon involves photographic apparitions. Since the 1990s, numerous pilgrims visiting the monastery of St. Maron in Anaya have reported the spontaneous appearance of the saint's image in photographs where it was not initially present. These remarkable manifestations often occur in photographs taken within the monastery grounds or near the hermitage. Upon developing these images or reviewing them on digital cameras, an additional figure emerges, identifiable as a monk with physical features resembling Saint Charbel, a presence that was not there at the moment the picture was taken. Photography experts have scrutinized many of these images, yet have found no evidence of manipulation or optical tricks at play. Alongside these extraordinary occurrences, countless everyday blessings continue to be attributed to the saint's intercession, recoveries of lost items, resolution of family conflicts, protection during perilous journeys, assistance in financial struggles, spiritual conversions, and religious vocations. The pilgrimage office at the Anaya Monastery receives daily letters and testimonies from believers around the world, expressing gratitude for favors bestowed through the mediation of Saint Charbel. A remarkable aspect of these miracles and appearances is their universal nature. Unlike other saints whose devotion may remain more localized within their regions of origin or their religious orders, Saint Charbel has crossed the borders of Lebanon and the Maronite Church, becoming a recognized intercessor for Catholics of all rites, and even for Christians from other denominations and individuals of different faiths. In Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and other countries with a significant Muslim presence, it's not uncommon to find devotees of the Saint of Lebanon among followers of Islam who visit his tomb or keep his image for protection. This universal devotion to Saint Charbel reflects the universality of his message, the pursuit of God in silence, prayer, and austerity, values that transcend confessional and cultural differences. Through his appearances and miracles, the hermit saint continues his evangelizing mission, drawing souls to Christ not through speeches or written works, which he never produced during his lifetime, but through the silent yet powerful testimony of his effective intercession and his life entirely devoted to God. Chapter 10. The Canonization Process. The canonization of Saint Charbel followed a rigorous process that began shortly after his death, when the extraordinary phenomena at his tomb caught the attention of church authorities. The Maronite Patriarchate formally initiated the beatification cause in 1925, establishing a tribunal to gather testimonies from those who knew the hermit, as well as from the beneficiaries of his miracles. Simultaneously, his life and virtues were thoroughly examined, reviewing monastic archives and written testimonies that confirmed his heroic practice of Christian virtues. In 1927, a second exhumation revealed that his body remained incorrupt, a phenomenon documented with photographs and medical certificates that bolstered his case. The complete dossier arrived in Rome in 1938, where the Congregation for the Causes of Saints subjected it to rigorous scrutiny. Pope Pius V declared Father Charbel venerable on December 5, 1965, acknowledging his heroism in virtues. For his beatification, the Church verified the miraculous healing of Sister Maria Abel Kamari, a Lebanese nun who was instantly cured of an incurable stomach ulcer. The beatification was celebrated on December 5, 1965, during the closing of the Second Vatican Council, making him the first Eastern Maronite elevated to the altars through the modern canonical procedure. For canonization, a second miracle was required: the inexplicable healing of Mariam Awad, who instantly recovered from a serious throat disorder after applying the saint's holy oil. Finally, on October 9, 1977, Pope Paul VI solemnly canonized Blessed Charbel in a ceremony in St. Peter's Square. In his homily, the pontiff emphasized how the holiness of the Lebanese hermit, rooted in silence, prayer, and penance, constituted a prophetic message for the modern world, which is overly immersed in noise, agitation, and consumerism. Prayer to Saint Charbel, O glorious Saint Charbel, monk and hermit, who renounced the comforts of this world to live in austerity and contemplation. Grant us the grace to love God above all else. You who spent long hours in adoration before the Blessed Sacrament, teach us to value the infinite treasure of the Eucharist and to find in it the strength for our journey. Father Charbel, from your hermitage in the mountains of Lebanon, you illuminated the world with the brilliance of your holiness. Help us understand that true greatness lies in humility and service. You who chose silence as your way of life, guide us to silence our vain words, so that we may listen to God's voice speaking within the silence of our hearts. humble son of the Maronite Church, who lived in perfect obedience to your superiors, seeing in them the divine will, grant us the grace of docility to the Holy Spirit and to the teachings of the Church. You, who mortified your body with fasting and penances, assist us in mastering our disordered passions, so that our spirit may freely rise toward God. Saint Hermit of Anaya, whose body remained incorrupt after death as a sign of your perfect purity, intercede for us, that we may live in chastity according to our state in life. You, whom God has glorified with the gift of performing miracles, look compassionately upon our material and spiritual needs, powerful miracle worker, through whose relics and the miraculous oil God continues to show his mercy. We plead for your intercession for the sick, especially for those suffering from incurable ailments, who have been given up by human medicine. Through your intercession, if it is for their salvation, may they receive healing of body, and in any case, the spiritual strength to accept divine will. Saint Charbel, protector of Lebanon and light of the East, pray for peace in your homeland and throughout the Middle East. May wars, religious divisions, and age-old hatreds cease, so that all children of Abraham may live as brothers and sisters, respecting their differences in a spirit of harmony and mutual understanding. Model of consecrated life, inspire many young people to follow the path of total commitment to Christ in the priesthood and religious life. May there never be a lack of contemplative souls in the Church who, like you, dedicate themselves to prayer and sacrifice for the salvation of the world. Father Charbel, you who now behold the face of God in heavenly glory, do not abandon us on our earthly journey. Join us in the trials and challenges we face each day. Strengthen our faith when we waver, reignite our hope when it begins to weaken, and let our love for God and for our neighbors burn with ever-increasing intensity. And when the moment comes for us to transition from this world to the Father, assist us with your powerful intercession, so that, purified from all sin, we may unite with you and all the saints in the eternal happiness of heaven, where we will forever praise and bless the Most Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.